Okay, so what I want to do in this video is talk a little bit about frictional versus structural unemployment, and to avoid going in depth and confusing you, I'm just going to give you a really simple hack in the scope of this class. If this doesn't help you, that's okay. By all means, you can look up, understand the definitions of each specific one, but I'm just going to use examples because that's what you're going to be tested on, is these specific examples, and specifically the examples of structural unemployment. What structural unemployment is? Three things. So these three things are, one, we have minimum wage law. The heck? So minimum wages, two is unions or unionization, and three is efficiency wages. So what these do is they create unemployment, and I'll explain why. So with minimum wage and unions, they basically have the same effect. So I'll just use minimum wages for the example, but let's say you own a company and you have $100 to spend on labor. That's your finite amount. That's what you've devoted on labor. And each person currently in the market, it costs $10 an hour. How many employees can you hire? And this is $100 per hour. Let me be clear. Well, you could hire 10. Okay. Now, let's say a minimum wage law comes in, and now it raises the minimum wage to $20 an hour. How is that going to affect your labor force? Well, now you can only hire 5 workers. And that's the case, is now these companies that only have so much money to spend on labor, they can't hire as many workers. So this promotes unemployment. It also affects unemployment because minimum wage has increased. More people, maybe not in the labor force, are incentivized to enter the labor force and try and look for a job. Doesn't mean they'll get one, but they'll try and look for one because it's paying so much higher. That's the case for unions as well. Efficiency wages is a little bit different. It's not a government mandate. It's more like these big companies. It's very common in tech companies, but like Google, Meta, let's say the market salary for, a job, a programmer is $100,000. Google will then offer $180,000. So obviously it creates this natural demand where everyone wants to apply for Google, and everyone wants, maybe they'll leave their current job and try and get a job with Google. And this creates unemployment, but it's good for Google because now they can pick the best workers because they're getting applicants from everyone, and it also allows them to retain workers a lot better. So all these are just examples of structural unemployment. Now, here's a little hack. If it's not one of these three, it's not structural employment, then it's frictional unemployment. And that's really all you need to know for the scope of this class. If you want to understand the definition of frictional unemployment, that's fine. It's a little bit different. It's understanding change in the economy, and based upon the change in the economy, you're losing your jobs and such. But yeah, this is how I think the easiest way to remember it. So this is all structural. Okay. So let's answer this question. So if a government imposes a minimum wage of $6, how many workers will be unemployed? You guys know this. You can do this. But let's go over it. So minimum wage of $6, where would that be? Be right here. Okay, so what happens to supply? What happens to demand? Well, on this red line, it hits the supply curve right here. So in the labor market, it's a little bit tricky to identify what's being supplied, what's being demanded, and then demand happens right here. So in the labor market, what's happening is the supply is the actual labor force, people that are looking for a job. It's not jobs available, it's people that are looking for a job. That is your supply. Like how many workers are offering their services for labor. That is your supply. So obviously, if it's $6 an hour when the market used to be $4, there's going to be more workers available to hire, more supply. However, the demand, like we talked about, is going to decrease because there's not as much money to go around because you have a finite amount of labor. So rather than having 10 jobs, you can only have 5. And so that's reflected by this pink line. There's only maybe 20 jobs in this case, or it's hundreds of. So it's, what is that, like 2,000? So it's like 2,000 jobs when there's reality, there's let me make this green, 6,000 workers. So what's the unemployment? It's just the difference between these two lines. So that would be 4,000. Okay, hopefully this helps. As always, let me know if you have any questions. Adam out.